Welcome to the Conscious Beauty Podcast. I'm your host, Carla Kiana Rivera, founder and creative visionary of Kinnery. This podcast is an invitation to elevate the mind, body, and soul through meaningful conversations that inspire us to remember the beauty, wisdom, and divine power that has always lived within. Thank you for joining us. May you receive exactly what your heart is ready to hear. Today on Conscious Beauty, I am joined by Renée Loux, founder of Mama Lou Resins. Together, we explore how scent can become a pathway to presence, beauty, and remembrance. My hope is that today's conversation inspires you and offers you tools to elevate your mind, body, and soul. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Let's begin. How are you? You look beautiful.
You look beautiful.
Thank you. I'm just so excited to do this. I've been waiting for this moment forever. We both have.
I feel like since the first time we spoke on the phone, I can remember that call. I remember where I was standing. And feeling such a deep connection with you immediately. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me on my podcast. And I'm very excited to discuss everything about this incredible, what these resins are doing for you and for this world and bringing us back to the present moment, and how scent can really be a doorway for evolving the soul. I think that it's an incredible thing, and I just can't wait to talk about it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And we always have such wonderful conversations that connect so many pieces of the puzzle.
Definitely. I wanted to know, what is kind of your history, a little backstory about you?
Yes, I get that question of how does one arrive to working with tree resins? It's a long journey. The short of it really is I've been working with plants for over 30 years in many capacities, all through the sensorial pathways. And I started as a chef. And I was fascinated. Food was truly my muse. And in a lot of ways, I see that exploration and kind of a full gamut of a career as a chef with restaurants and cookbooks and a TV show and the kind of the whole 9 yards. So much of it really was in pursuit of scent. Taste is so profoundly influenced by scent. And so, I had been a plant-based chef, which requires a different kind of creativity to elicit really complex and deep flavor, which very much is reliant on scent. So that was where my kind of journey began. And I became very interested in skincare, hair care formulation, my interest in kind of understanding the impacts, or what do we have say over and choice over to influence our health and planetary health, and food being probably one of the number one things that we do multiple times a day. And, skincare, hair care, all that personal care products, I very much could see also has tremendous impact on our health. But also, with that same kind of curiosity that I had about food, which is very much formulation, I brought that to the formulation of skincare and hair care and really explored, formulating better for you products that were high performance. And that also was very much driven by scent. And, for anybody, I'm a bit of a product junkie, very clean ingredients, but one high performance, and scent has and always is and has always been a profound, something that draws me and it really can make such a difference in any given product. So through food, through formulation, and this pursuit of scent, I kind of continued to deepen it, and through a series of experiences and so forth, really started getting really intrigued by scent, which led me to resins, tree resins. And I'd always been interested in botanical fragrances. So it's been an interesting kind of rabbit hole to go down, if you will. But I very much see the relationship of all of these these pieces of food, a formulation of scent.
Well, I mean, of course, that's how we're able to navigate this world through our five senses. So, we see things, we hear things, we smell things, and with animals especially, scent is the most important thing that they have to navigate their world. And you can tell so much about any kind of product or person or food based on the scent. I mean, it's a way of understanding, actually.
I deeply agree with you. And it's
Yeah.
also so easily overlooked. It really is, scent is one of our earliest and first ways of knowing. And it's really a knowing. It's not so much thinking, but there's a very instinctual response that we have to scent. And it's a tremendous amount of information. And I often think, regardless of how conscious or unconscious it is, we are being influenced and informed by scent continuously. In our modern world, a lot of that is sort of shut down for better and worse, those sensitivities. But scent yeah, it's an incredible something that draws us, repels us, gives us information, transports us, is something beautiful and full of pleasure as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm a perfume kind of hoarder. And I have to say, it's so powerful. And when I discovered your resins, I mean, I cannot wait to discuss what you have in these resins because they are so powerful. I wasn't sure what resins were when I started I actually discovered resins before I met you. And I discovered them through this medicine woman who's based in Los Angeles. And she had a booth at the Conscious Life Expo many years ago, and she had all types of resins. Anyway, I just started buying whatever smelled good. But I didn't really understand how to burn them or what to do with them. So can you tell me exactly like what resins were and how did you come across them? And then decide to, of course, then launch a company regarding them. Yeah, like
Well,
how does that
if
work?
anything, yeah, it's a great question. And in a lot of ways, I feel like my name was sort of called in this direction. And so resins and yeah, it is sort of often a discovery of resins, right? Just as I
Yeah.
discovered resins, but humans have been using resins for thousands of years all over the world in a very similar way. So this is really a very ancient practice. These are beautiful materials that have been used for a very long time throughout humanity, and they are products of trees. Resins are exudates, they're exuded from trees, and trees produce a whole range of products from sap, latex, oil, waxes, and so forth. The resin is a product of trees, very different from sap. So sap, like maple syrup, is a water-based ingredient that delivers nutrient and works in different ways in a tree. But resin is produced by trees when a tree is injured, actually. And there are many, many trees that produce resin. I mean, there are countless number of trees. Not all trees produce resin, but many, many
Mm.
do. Not all are fragrant, but many, many are. And so trees produce their special cells in trees that cause the resin to be produced when a tree is injured. And it's fundamentally a tree's response of healing and protection, which really, I think one of the things in this long walk with working with plants for so long through food and elsewhere, if we pause and take a step back and observe what nature is doing, it tells us a lot about it. And so if you observe why a tree produces resin, it will tell you a lot about what our relationship with resin can be. So if you look at a tree, if you've ever seen a tree naturally produce resin in a forest, if you see a pine tree that's maybe has a limb that's broken, you'll see resin naturally exuded.
Yeah.
In the long relationships humans have had with resins, they are harvested. It's a process that trees are actually kind of intentionally injured in order to produce the resin. And so resin comes out as sort of a thick liquid, and it's dried into something that's really unlike anything else on earth. I mean, you've seen it, and so you know.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people have heard of frankincense. It's by far the most famous resin, but there are hundreds of resins from all over the world. And they range, what do they look like, ranges widely in color, in viscosity, in density. Some are more sticky, some are more glass-like. But they all have, the fragrant resins all have essential oils basically locked up in this matrix of these resins. So it's an incredibly stable kind of format for essential oils to really be concentrated. And I'd say arguably resins are the most potent natural scent on earth. I mean, most of the really fragrant things, flowers, other botanicals, it's very evasive, and we can, try to capture those essential oils and fix them into a perfume. And I too, I'm with you, sister. Like, I love perfume and very natural perfume.
Yeah.
But, the perfume up until the chemical revolution was always natural. Oh, and not that many people know that much about resins, but the perfumers do. Perfumers use resins because of their unusual scents, their extraordinary uniqueness of scent, and the concentration. So trees produce resin when they're injured, really as a first aid kit, and that will tell you a lot about what is in resin. And if you look at what from the active compounds to the traditional use, it all reflects healing and repair. And that's really what they have to offer, whether we're burning them percent, whether we're taking them internally, using them topically. It's what they're I think of them as the frequency of healing and repair and protection. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. One time I was in the jungle in the Riviera Maya, and we were getting a tour of these ancient temples or pyramids, I should say. And the tour guide showed us two different trees. One was dark black and the other one was dark red. The dark black one was, I'm sorry, I may be switching them up. Either the red one was poisonous or the dark black one was poisonous. Anyway, so let's just say the red one was poisonous. So if you touch the red one, you would have a horrible reaction to it. But the black tree had a healing resin for that exact bite from the red tree. So it's just so funny how nature works out like that. And they were across from each other, sharing the same root system. They both knew what each other possessed, and they were there for a perfect balance of this kind of nature's game, so to speak. Fascinating stuff.
I love that story, and it really it illustrates to me what the unbelievable intelligence of nature.
Oh,
a kind of intelligence that is so far beyond so much of human intelligence, and not to put it in a hierarchy, but I think that I love that story also because I believe there's a lot we can learn from trees. And I think it's a big part of why, for me, I'm deeply drawn to tree resin and to these materials as products of trees, because trees are the oldest beings on Earth. The oldest beings on Earth. The oldest tree on Earth is not too far from where you are. It's in the Mojave Desert on the way to the Sierra Nevadas. It's a Bristol pine tree that's 5,000 years old. And it's still alive. That's as old as the pyramids.
Wow.
And so, what do these beings have to teach us in these times of change? I think there's a lot, of how do we endure and navigate times of change as these beings have. And also, there's so much to be said about, looking at trees that are they thrive in community. A lone tree by itself is susceptible to a lot. But,
Mm-hmm.
we know so much more about these mycelial networks, that these trees are
Mm-hmm.
actually interlinked underground, that they're sharing information, resources, they're helping each other, they're aiding each other.
Yes.
They're in community, so I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to learn, in these times again from these ways, that if we slow down to observe some of what is going on in nature, it's just a treasure trove of possibility. And so that's something that continues to intrigue me.
That's incredible because the other day I was walking and there's a favorite park that is near me and I always go there and they have these beautiful eucalyptus trees. And for me, eucalyptus is an incredibly powerful scent and we all know it's very healing for our bodies. However, sometimes I feel their presence and the last time I was at that park, their presence was so intense and old, like this ancient kind of energy. And not only was that a very powerful energy, but the message I received was slow down. Like it was almost like I just had to stay with them and be still to feel that energy. It was an incredible experience, and I think with the idea of resins and burning the resins, in that form of ritual is the idea of slowing down, to pause and really, really take in the present moment. And that is the one thing that I really wanted to tap into today. Because when I started burning your resin, I do have to say it's a disclaimer. Everyone needs to have patience to do it. So you kind of have to just slow down and really be one with the resins. And I wanted to ask you, like, did you find that when you started discovering the resins that you just had to kind of like change your pace overall?
Yes, I mean, I found so many responses to like a deepening work with resins that it really has changed me. And that piece about slowing down is, I would say, one of the real gems. And with burning resin, I mean, there's a practical slowing down required because, unlike traditional incense in which you light and walk away,
Yeah.
resin, it takes a few steps. They're not complicated, but they do ask our attention. And so traditionally, resin is burned on charcoal. So the charcoal
Hmm.
first has to be lit,
Hmm.
and then it had the coal has to become a full ember, and
Hmm.
then resin is put on top of the charcoal. So there's a bit of a step there
Hmm.
that, yes, it's a little bit of a obstacle, right? It does ask for a little more time and attention. And I found, though, in that extra step of time and attention is all of the difference in so many things. And, in terms of the term, in terms of ritual, and really what is ritual? Ritual in many ways is simply a mindful sequence, right? It doesn't have to be fancy. It's not something we need to go on a retreat to Tulum to do.
Hmm.
Ritual is available every day. And so this is, in a lot of ways, resin has brought ritual into my everyday many times a day. I burn a lot of resin, but that it really is an invitation to a very simple ritual that invites real presence to this moment. And there's some extraordinary power to that is interwoven directly with scent and our brain's processing of scent and how we relate to scent and how these things can really bring us to a kind of present moment that otherwise takes a lot of work to get to really slow down and be present, right? In this age of incredible amount of demand on our intention, these tools that help us to slow down and come to the present moment. I mean, that is where the true that sense of being is, in the present moment, and actually it's simpler than I know I make things out to be often, that all these things are needed in order for me to feel that state of being, in which is really just my absolute present here with what's actually happening. So I love that you say that about the eucalyptus, because trees are beings, and they do have a
Absolutely.
presence. And to walk into a forest is a palpable experience. And there's cultures that, the Japanese culture of forest bathing is as old as the hills. These ways we've been using for a very long time. And so there is a return, I use this term a lot, returning to ritual, that we're returning to these ways, returning to remember how we've done things in ways that have helped us through times like these that have asked a lot of us. So, scent particularly is a really potent kind of pathway for presence. And we've talked quite a bit about that, but some of it has to do with how we process scent, and why have cultures around the world for thousands of years, scent has been an intrinsic part of so many ceremonies and rites of passage and births and deaths and thresholds, right? Scent marks passageways, marks thresholds. And, I think you've probably experienced, and, I am always very curious where kind of the science and spirit meet, where in fact it's more like the curiosity of where science can reflect what traditional wisdom has known for a very long time. That's the really, to me, that's my jam, right in that intersection. And so, some of the interesting aspects of scent that, to me raise a lot of kind of curiosity and consideration are really is how our brain processes scent, which is really quite different from all of our other senses. So we process scent, we have all these nerves coming off the brain, and the olfactory nerve comes right back behind the bridge of the nose. There's like a plate right behind the bridge of the nose, and the nerve comes through, the olfactory nerve comes through that into that cavity. There's a lot going on back there. This is where we assimilate prana and mana, and there's a lot. This is really when we do that deep ujjayi breathing, is to really activate that cavity back there. And that is where our these scent molecules, on which there are countless, meet our olfactory receptor in like a lock and a key that to me seems like a billion years of evolution. That we have evolved, like this is part of our deep intrinsic way we have evolved as humans. And that information, that receptor meets the molecule, and it bypasses the processing brain. That's the headline.
Okay.
So when you smell something, it's not a thought. It transports you because it bypasses the processing brain. And it gets delivered directly into the limbic system, which is, amongst many capacities, is the seat of our memory, our associative learning, which is the doorway of scent, and our emotional processing is all in that limbic region. And so, why is scent transporting is because of that, because it's not a thought. It's an emotive, it's a powerful backdoor into a much deeper part of our relationship to memory, learning, and emotions. So this is kind of, to me, again, headline news. I mean, what are we focusing on in this world? I mean, this is pretty interesting and enriching stuff. And so when you walk into that eucalyptus forest, not only are you amongst these grand beings, you're also, you are having a visceral, transportative experience because of the scent that they are releasing. And, you're in relation with these trees, and that's pretty magnificent.
It is. And I think this is perfect timing for where we are at, because going back to this kind of concept of returning to ritual, to these ancient practices. So human beings, we have lost our way completely. And I really feel the only way to evolve in a good way is to come back to this ancient way of being that Jesus talked about. And, I think it was called the way. And I think that's a way of slowing down, of really being one with nature. But I mean, because we're just so far off right now. So when I burn these resins, even, smelling frankincense, that takes me back to a time. Oh, I was just, Jesus, God, the bells are ringing. This is this is a sign.
Yes.
But it takes me to that time of like when I was a little girl in the Catholic Church, listening to Latin. They used to speak Latin in the church that I went to, and they would burn frankincense. And I always wondered what that smell was. Like, why are they burning that? I never understood it. And so I'm curious to know the backstory behind some of these particular resins. Why, for instance, when the story of Jesus when he was born, why did some of the wise men bring frankincense? What was so important about that resin?
And it's amazing. And this story really is why frankincense is so known in the West, because of this biblical story, right? And really is an extraordinary. I mean, frankincense is divine, and that really is
Absolutely.
what the offering was, as a representation of divinity. I think in a lot of ways, what was believed with the wise men who offered frankincense, myrrh, another resin, and
Yes.
gold, right? I have read some interesting things that suggest that the gold actually was another resin, and it's one that I work with. So, but why? So these are revered, to the Son of God. They're
Yes.
that elevated. They're that elevated, and so I think in a lot of traditions, frankincense is recognized as the doorway to the divine, and not the divine that's out there. It's the divine that is, that we are. Divinity, I'm not a theological scholar, but just from my lived experience, divinity is, it is, it's in all things, and this idea of connecting with that isn't about going outward. It's really about going inward. And so there is something to be said about the scent pathway that helps us do that. And is that part of why frankincense has been used traditionally by many traditions, including the Catholic Church, because it is this doorway. The scent is a doorway. And resins have a very unique scent, right? And so I find this, I burn a lot of resins in a lot of places. And most people who grew up going to a Catholic church recognize it. It's like it cuts through all the noise, right? And that's
Yes.
the nature of it, right? And so therein lies part of how it has been used and how scent can be used, which isn't exclusive to resins, but certainly given the concentration of scent and the uniqueness of scent in resins is certainly amplified in the possibility of this olfactory imprint. And this is kind of related to this emotional, the associative learning part of our limbic brain. So our ability to associate, like this capacity, this particular type of learning that we have. And there's plenty of clinical out there. If you study for a test and you smell peppermint, if you use essential oil peppermint, study for the test. When you take that test, you smell that peppermint, you can recall the information more accurately. Again, we're in the limbic. This is where the memory is. And so there is this doorway of associating, using scent as an associative tool. So that is traditionally part of how resins have been used in, spiritual settings. But it's also, I know, because you burn the resins, they shift the atmosphere. Like there is something
Definitely.
palpable that changes in a room where resins have been burned. It's unlike other burnables, and it's part of that is it's more of a vapor than a smoke. There is some
True.
smoke, and the smoke that's in resins. So resins are usually a combination of, a tree produces something that's a combination of resin and gum, right? And so, and the gums tend to be more smoky, depending on the makeup of the particular resin, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the copal is like almost pure resin, but frankincense is a little more of a blend of a resin and a gum as far as what makes it up. And
Mm-hmm.
so nonetheless, most resin, when you burn it, it really is not, it's not smoky. There's nothing smoky about the residue that's left. And I think you know this because you burn it. If
Mm-hmm.
you burn it and really fill the room, it looks like smoke. If you leave the room and come back, there's nothing smoky about the scent that's left. And it's kind of extraordinary. And so there's a few capacities that just are in this kind of the mystery of resins. I think I've encountered many people who say they really feel a difference in a room. It's like the atmosphere shifts, like you feel something clear.
Yes.
So, I think if we look at kind of the science of, well, what is that? This idea of clearing with smoke or clearing with resins, which is something
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot more commonly known these days. The idea of
Mm-hmm.
smudging and clearing a room with Palo Santo or sage. Resins certainly can, quote, you be used to cleanse a space. But part of what's going on with resins is that resin has antipathogenic properties. It
Mm-hmm.
literally kills bacteria, viruses. You can look at this under the lens of science.
Mm-hmm.
So, also traditionally, this was why resins were used in temples and churches and synagogues, was to clear the space. And,
Mm-hmm.
the traditional wisdom maybe didn't understand the science of antipathogenic compounds,
Mm-hmm.
but there was something noted, observed, and felt about that
Mm-hmm.
clearing, right? It was a
Mm-hmm.
felt, lived experience. But we can actually look through the lens of science and see, oh my, they're literally clearing the space,
Yes.
clearing space. So, that may be part of what we experience in that lived experience of, oh, when you encounter a room where resin's been burned, you feel it. So we can look to me, there's enough kind of scientific evidence
Yes.
to kind of make it curious and interesting. But what I know is what I feel when I am in that room. And this is something I think that, is a tool that's possible that I use in my life. And I know you do too. These
Mm-hmm.
tools that help ground us, help us find moments of presence, help us clear those thoughts that are busying our brains, tools that
Mm-hmm.
help us come back to this present moment. And so I feel that that's what's at the heart of what resins have to offer in a scent-based way, is to bring
Mm-hmm.
us to presence.
It's so true. I have felt that. And I also have to add, when you do burn smoke in your house, generally your furniture smells like smoke, your clothes smell like smoke. And you're right, with the resins, your house doesn't smell like anything for days after. It just smells cleaner. So it's definitely a natural way of like cleansing any kind of like odor in your home,
Yes.
right?
I mean, one of the things I
Yeah.
do, in my closet, I
Hmm.
live in Hawaii and I
Yeah.
live right on the lee, so it's not very, very wet. It's
I
actually
feel
pretty
so
lemon.
sorry for you. I feel so
Oh,
sorry for you.
somebody's got to do it. Um, the I but it to keep my closet fresh, one of the things I do is I get a bowl really going with one of the blends, often with Thin the Veils, which is one of
Oh.
my favorite, has a lot of frankincense in it. I get that going and I just put it in my closet and let it fumigate my closet. And it
Mm-hmm.
leaves a scent on my clothes that is unbelievable.
Yeah,
And
but clean,
traditionally,
but it's like a
clean,
clean
nothing
smell. Yeah,
smoky, no
exactly. Yes, yes,
smoke,
yes.
not at all.
Uh-huh.
And I love smoke. I do. I
Mm-hmm.
love burning wood, and I love that. But it's heavy. It's got a different, way about it.
Mm-hmm.
The resins are like upper echelon,
Yes.
upper frequency, raise the frequency, and including in the actual scent. But in the Middle East, they have these wonderful brushes that they brush them through their hair to scent their
Mm.
hair and their clothes. Yeah, it's not smoky at all. It's like just this gentle, gentle wafting perfume. So beautiful. Yeah. I'm looking
Yes.
for any way I can merge even more deeply with the resins. I just
I
smitten
love it.
completely.
I love it, especially the way they look. And you're right, all of them are different. They're so beautiful. Nature is just so exquisite and miraculous. I mean, if I was you dealing with these all day, I would be playing like you're probably playing all day. That's what you're
Well,
doing.
it is extraordinary to me, and the diversity. Yes, I do believe, Pachamama is the greatest artist of all, but many of them, yeah, they look like gems. I mean,
Yes, yes,
they
yes, yes.
look like stone, like clear
Right.
stone. It's unbelievable, and the color, and they're gorgeous at every level, and it astounds me. I haven't found the bottom of the rabbit hole. I'm discovering resins all the
Oh,
time. I mean, there are
absolutely.
so many. And, I source them from all over the world and do everything I can to source responsibly and with traditional harvesting, which is inherently sustainable because,
Hmm.
these are exudates of trees. It is possible to exploit and overtap a tree and
Mm.
harm or kill it,
Yes, true.
but in the cultures where this has been revered for thousands of years, these trees are from members of their families.
Hmm.
They have been stewarding. Trees get handed down for generations to care, but a lot of them can only be harvested really once a year, and it has to
Hmm.
do often with a seasonal event or climactic event after a certain season, the
Hmm.
time of year that is preferable. But the same tree, depending on where on the tree it's harvested, can
Hmm.
produce different kind of quality of materials. And, like back to the frankincense, I mean, there are hundreds of types of frankincense. Frankincense is a family of trees, the way
Hmm.
maple trees are a family, and there's sugar
Hmm.
maples and there's Japanese maples. So
Hmm.
same in the Boswellia family, and they grow in a latitudinal belt. So from Eastern Africa,
Hmm.
Western Africa, the Middle East, and India, this belt,
Hmm. Hmm.
latitudinal belt, is where these trees grow. So there are
Hmm.
hundreds of types of frankincense. I mean, so many.
Hmm.
And so, one of the things it really is so much fun is hunting for them and then
Hmm.
kind of connecting with the different quality of scent or the quality of kind of traditionally how they've been used, kind of
Hmm.
what our relationship can be with them. But, some of the most revered frankincense is from Oman, which is just, it is next level. There's frankincense and then there's frankincense. And so,
Wow.
and some of them,
Where is that? Sorry.
Oman is in the Middle East.
Oh, okay, okay.
So,
Hmm.
and quite wonderfully, for better or worse, the government there has taken over the frankincense trade to ensure its sustainability,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
it's a difficult thing that in many areas in where there are resin producing trees, people are trying to feed their families,
Hmm.
and we all as humans, we are exploitative. It is exploitative to be alive. And so, it's understandable actually that people end up exploiting these resources to try to earn a living, make their families. And
Yes.
so, this is part of my devotion to really try to support traditional harvesting and care for the tree, to mindful resourcing of these materials. But this is a little bit like, you know, and it sounds like your first encounter with resins was at a trade show with kind of high quality resins, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of resin out there on the market that is marketed as, one thing or another, and it really isn't
Hmm.
that. And it doesn't make it necessarily inferior.
Hmm.
But like as an example, copal, there
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
like frankincense, there are
Hmm.
hundreds of types of copal. I mean, there are so
Hmm.
many types of copal, and they range in color and texture. Some are black, some are white, some are
Hmm.
sticky, some are crystal clear. I mean, it's extraordinary. That's just the copal family, right? But copal in some orientation can translate to mean incense, kind of
Oh.
generally. So
Okay.
there's a lot of copal, quote unquote, sold as copal that isn't really from that family. There's a bunch of
Oh,
copal I see that's from actually Southeast Asia. It doesn't make it bad. It's just not actually copal. It's something else. It's from the Damar family. It's from another family. So, that's something I think that it's a bit of a wild west out there in the marketplace of what you're
yes.
getting. So that's something that I've, continue to take a lot of care and time. And, I often begin by looking at the species of trees and what the terpene portfolio to see what has the highest actives to identify the species that are going to be the most potent and translate to the most beautiful smell. So,
Mm,
it's to me, kind of drawing from a bunch of different ways of identifying these different species that I use, and I
mm-hmm.
work with dozens of them, and blend them together. And that's sort of part of the art, I think, like a perfumer, that's
Yes.
bringing together, layering. It unfolds the way a perfume unfolds. There's lots of
Yes.
layers and notes, top notes and heart notes and base notes. And it's a real, it's an unfolding experience when you blend with the resins I blend together, and in this way, and to some degree is unconventional to be able to blend these resins from all over the world. I have kind of
Mm-hmm.
the liberty to be in the modern day and have
Mm-hmm.
access to be able to source
True.
and,
Yes.
and do so as mindfully as I can. But the synergy of when you bring them together is also very much like perfume. I mean, it's, certainly, especially these really elevated resins, singly burning them is an extraordinary experience. But when you bring them together in a kind of synergy, it is a whole nother experience, which I know you've experienced, that's really, I think, something special that is being offered here.
I think it's incredible. I love your blends. But it's so funny because before I met you, I had a feeling there was like a negative energy in my home, and I was trying to get rid of it. And I wasn't sure what it was, but I felt it. Anyway, so one of my friends, another friend who's a medicine woman, I just hang around with all these medicine women. So they're
Well, you
very
are one.
wise.
You are one.
True, true. And I asked her, I said, what do I do? Do I burn sage, Palo Santo? Which one? She said, no, you need to burn copal.
Oh,
And so I was looking on Amazon. She was supposed to give me some, but for some reason, that didn't work out because she was out of town. So I was looking on Amazon for copal, and there was so many to choose from.
so many.
I actually didn't end up getting it because I was too overwhelmed. I didn't know which one to get. Anyway, so I met you, and then I think the blend that you gave me has copal in it and the frankincense. So I did burn sage just to let you know, but
Yes. So
burning this, honestly, I don't feel that energy in my home anymore. I don't know if it has to do with the resin or just frankly my intention, right?
or a combination of both, you know.
Exactly.
I mean,
Hmm.
it does seem to me like these, you know, yeah, when I think there's plenty of things that more of us are encountering that don't quite fit a mold of how do you resolve something, right? Something like that. Like you feel like something's off in your house, and it's like,
Right.
and so how beautiful, to resource some of these tools that can help kind of shift or change and I really do believe in the power of intention,
Hmm.
as you brought to that process for yourself. Intention, using a tool and intentionally clearing, likelihood, better
Yes.
outcome.
So
Yeah,
true.
what we focus on grows stronger, right? And I do believe this about ritual and ritual tools, particularly. I'm somebody who really believes in having, with the resins, we provide a ritual kit of the burners and handmade ceramic bowls that were made with the intention as ritual bowls. But whatever your tools, to devote them as ritual tools so
Hmm.
that you have, with the resins, it does require, you need a burner, the charcoal. It's nice to have
Hmm.
some metal tools because it gets hot and so you can handle it.
True.
But it's part of what why altars, it's a dedicated space, it's a dedicated
Mm-hmm.
tools. It's really what we're reserving, these things for. So therefore, when I arrive to my altar with my ritual tools, I immediately drop into something deeply because we're here together in a relationship with the tools, but that there does seem to be a kind of clarification of, having ritual tools that is kind of like a relationship. The more energy I'm giving to my items, the
Mm-hmm.
more energy I feel when I'm working with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not all of that goes through the lens of science, but I can say it's a lived experience. So I'm a believer in that, to have a corner, even if it's on your dresser, where you have a special candle, and maybe you have a found object that you found in nature or something, that is a reminder, that is a dedicated space for a reminder for that which you're approaching that for, you know. Um, I really do believe that, and I've lived in my own life the power and meaning that I really do believe the magic is in the meaning we give things.
I completely agree with you. And that's why I feel this return to ancient practices. And human beings have been doing this for thousands upon, even older than what we think, to be honest, right? Let's just say it. Let's call a spade a spade.
Absolutely. Well,
We've been here a long time.
we have been here a long time, and there's arguable, yeah, our belief about when, quote, civilized history began. I mean, I think there's a lot of evidence now that it is a lot older than
Yes.
originally we thought, right?
Yeah.
And these ways, I think that it's possible to sort of gloss over, well, what are these ancient ways, these traditional ways? We've evolved, we're evolving, and yes, yes, we are.
Right.
Yes, we are. And there's so much incredible advancement happening, and these ways that have been with us for a very long time through all kinds of ages. I mean, I think I encounter a lot of people who feel like we're living in kind of unprecedented times. Like things really feel like they are, there's an intensification that a lot of people are experiencing in a lot of ways. And, I feel that myself. And I also
Hmm.
recognize we as humans have been experiencing a lot of these intersections and junctures and challenges and crossroads and you know, for a very long time. And
Hmm.
yes, and so to consider and look back and pay homage and bring forward, these rites and rituals that have helped us through difficult times and through times of exaltation and
Hmm.
celebration and the whole gamut of it. So, in this ways, resin really has been used in these ways. In
Hmm.
these ways to mark sacred space, to mark ceremony, to mark passage, to mark threshold and birth and death, and particularly with the potency of scent that really anchors experience, so
Hmm.
that part of this concept of that associative learning, that olfactory imprint, right, which has been, science really recognizes the power of an olfactory imprint,
Hmm.
right, that if we associate, right, you can be transported to 7 years old on the lawn if you smell just the right smell, right, or
Yes.
the right perfume of your grandmother. It's
Yes.
an extraordinary transporting, right? And so
Yes.
this can be used in a very practical way,
Hmm.
that if you elicit a state of mind through meditation, spiritual practice, even exercise,
Hmm.
celebration, elicit a state of mind, one that you want to repeat.
Hmm.
You elicit a state of mind and you weave a scent into there.
Yes.
Then, when you smell the scent, it elicits the state of mind. And that's
Yes.
just the way it works. That's not woo woo. That's just how the brain processes scent, right? Just
Hmm.
if you smell chocolate chip cookies, where does it bring you, right?
Yeah.
It's so we can use scent in this way as a tool in a practical tool based way,
Hmm.
and so one of the things I think about resin, because of the potency of the scent and the uniqueness of the scent profile, it's very distinct. And so it can be used, I think, very distinctly, especially for mindfulness practices or transformational practices. I love sage and all kinds of sage, and I try to source it as mindful as I can because it's, I purchase actually cultivated sage that's grown, right, instead of wild crafted sage because, people are not all ill-willed, but are wild harvesting the heck out of everything, and we're wild harvesting things to extinction. Palo Santo I also love, and also try to mindfully source. And I work with Palo Santo resin, which is like an injection. I mean, I love the holy wood. I love the holy wood.
I want that.
Yeah. Well, it's in the Clear and Colin is
okay. I need to get
one
that
of the
one.
blends.
Okay.
But nonetheless, some of these more ubiquitous smells like Palo Santo and sage, which I love and revere, but they're ubiquitous. You smell them all over. So it's hard to always use that as an olfactory imprint because you've been so saturated with exposing, you've smelled it so much. That being said, you had asked about, this sort of what brought me to the resins, in the unfolding of my kind of awakening to the power of scent, included a few experiences I had that were inextricably linked with scent, like transformational experiences that I had a real shift of perspective, like a profound tectonic shift of perspective that scent was a part of. And one of them was years ago when I was living in New York, and it was after my mother had died, and I was in business divestment and just it really demanding emotional time. And I had gotten turned on to this extraordinary somatic high intensity interval training class called The Class, which is amazing. I'm a huge fan still. And they burn Palo Santo, and it's a high, beautiful, play incredible music. It's a cathartic, somatic, real intense workout, 50 minutes. So you're sweating, it's really gets you there, right? But it was in this time in which I actually linked that I somatically, I'm somebody who I need to sweat. I need to sweat a few times a week, and I have to work really hard to sweat. I'm not a sweater. So I need intense workout to sweat, and I don't need a long duration, but I need to, I also, sauna helps me. It's part of my processing and my detox to sweat. So anyway, I kind of linked, I actually got that by physically working out, I could work out these emotions. Like I could put this, the loss, just my mother's death, we were so close and she's with me still, but it was a profound experience that I was able to work out and connect this somatic experience with this emotional processing and the scent of Palo Santo, because it was burned in that space, is always linked to that for me.
Oh, how
and
beautiful.
It's incredible. It's beautiful. And so I love that Hollywood. But yes, the resin it has to do with the concentration of all the active compounds is just more, and the resin's deeper, more concentrated. Yeah. And that's a pretty extraordinary blend I mentioned, that Clear and Call-in, which is really about clearing at every level: physical, mental, psychic, emotional, too many thoughts, really comprehensively clearing and really holding that space, really guarding those gates to call it in. What are we, and this is something about, it is really wonderful that more of us are aware about how to clear a space, how to clear a space and create a force field. But what are then we filling that space with? Because the universe abhors a vacuum. And so clear, yes, clear. But what are we intentionally drawing in then to that space? And so that blend has been formulated for that kind of alternator where you're clearing and inviting in then. It's sort of squeezing out the sponge to reabsorb, what it is that we want to be, invite into our soul, into our space.
That is so true and so fascinating to think about. Did you know that, and I'm sure you do know, did you know that... Oh,
holy bells, reminder at the top of the hour.
Those bells are so beautiful. Do you know, I love bells. That's why when I go to like Italy and you hear the bells, I mean, bells, we forgot that. That's another part of our past that we have forgotten. Bells.
Sound. Yes, sound and bells
Yes.
and that resonant. And so sound as another sensorial pathway,
Mm-hmm.
and sound is unto its own processing, and very different. I mean, I think, how sound truly changes us. I mean, it's a frequency that passes through us, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's extraordinary, the kind of the blossoming. And we've done some of these sound baths together,
Mm.
in these
Yes.
resonant, right? Their frequencies. We're shifting the frequency, and it's really powerful. I would do some of these sensorial immersions with scent and sound and breath. And,
Ah.
one of the qualities about these sensory pathways that I'm more and more deeply relating to really is, not only are they the way we get information, I mean, it is how we get information through these
Mm-hmm.
senses,
Mm-hmm.
including our sixth sense, you
Mm.
know. Um, but these pathways are how we're taking in all of this information, but also they can be very nourishing.
Mm-hmm.
How do we nourish these pathways, right? Because we're inundated. I
Mm.
mean, it's why
Yeah.
even those of us who really try to filter what it is we're laying our eyes on and what we're taking in, but it's a assault on the senses to be in the modern day. I mean, it's, and we slowly become desensitized, because we are inundated. Um, and in some of the traditions I've studied, like Ayurveda, which is an ancient tradition
Mm-hmm.
and method, the idea of cleansing these pathways is hugely important and helpful. How do we cleanse our sensory pathways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so and I think this is part of what sound baths attract people, because part of what they do is you receive. You just
Mm-hmm.
receive. There's
Yes.
nothing to
Yeah.
do. You
Yes.
receive. And scent is
Yes.
this way too. You don't go
True.
get a scent, you take it in.
Yes.
And in that taking in, it asks, no, it requires us to slow down, to take it in. It's not about putting something out, it's about receiving. And that, I tell you, in this modern day is something that we have to learn how to receive, how to
Mm-hmm.
receive. Not how to receive and secretly wait for our turn to do our thing, or, but to actually receive. And this is potent
Yes.
and powerful and is directly connected to our capacity to receive intuition, our intuitive knowing that is with us all the time and is often obscured by the noise, the pollution, the too much, right? But to tune into scent and sound, but scent is my muse,
Mm-hmm.
helps us in a tangible way to receive. And this is part of a sensory, and a resin-based practice about, to use it, to take it in and to practice this with something tangible to receive, right? And so, I do meditate and have many practices, but I do well with three-dimensional tools as well. And so scent, it's a tangible tool, and it's
Mm-hmm.
somewhere straddling the mysteries, right? Like you and I, we can't see the scent, we can't touch it, but we know it's there. We can have a conversation about it. It's reaching into the mysteries, into the unknown, into the unseen, but there's like a tangible line to this inhabited three-dimensional world, which to me is incredible and curious and interesting. It's an exploration of our minds, or an exploration of our presence with the tangible tool. And so this capacity to learn how to receive, and we can develop this just as we can develop our sense of smell. My sense of smell is incredibly more sophisticated now. I work with it so much. I
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to it. I,
Mm-hmm.
I try to tune into the nuances of scent. Like if you want to
Mm-hmm.
do a really interesting brain exercise,
Mm-hmm.
try to really tune into a scent and try to describe what you smell. It's like incredible, so then
Mm.
we see what the wine industry has done when they're talking about
Yes.
it's like leathery, and it's,
Yeah.
because you're trying to it's something, it's so emotive, it's so sensorial, but to try to explain what it is kind of really interesting and fascinating. But it's really enriching for the brain. I mean, this is what I get in a lived experience is it's nourishment for my brain when I receive sound, when I receive scent. I feel like it's nourishing my brain. And I want to nourish my brain. My brain does so much. Our brains are just overtaxed, they're asked to do so much. And then there's more, there's more and more decline, as we're getting older. And so how do I want to take care of my brain? And I know that scent is a real way to do it. And there's very interesting clinical studies about the relationship of scent and memory, right? So we're to the limbic center of the brain. And I'm not a brain scientist, but I'm really interested in stuff and interested in it in a lived way, in an experience, where the brain science is fascinating. But that there's a relationship between, our sense of smell and our memory as we get older, and our capacity to smell and our capacity for memory is linked, and it is related, and it can't entirely be seen, well, which one comes first? And unfortunately, we see it when there's decline, and this is kind of where it gets detected. And there's, I've looked at, some of these studies that have been done that can correlate loss of memory. There's a seeming associated loss of smell. And so which one comes first? I don't entirely know. I don't know if it's known. But there are some of these, again, they're sort of science-backed, therapies using scent to try to help. We can't go far as to say, and again, I'm not a doctor, so please consult your trusted medical practitioner before taking any of this, advice. This is just information. But that some of what I've read doesn't go so far as to suggest that scent can correct memory, but it may help keep our memory more active and alive. And that makes sense in a practical way. If scent is connected to the limbic where our memory is, and we're activating that by smelling, then we're using that part of our brain more. It seems practically so.
Like a muscle, like just using a muscle again.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so, some of the advice coming out of that is smell things, smell lots of things, and literally stop to smell the roses and smell things that smell good. And when you smell something that's pleasant, all I have to do is suggest imagining smelling something that you love, that you can feel the right? So
definitely
that can be measured, that anti-inflammatory, that nervous system can be measured through our scent. When we take in scent that's pleasant, and it's not just resins, it's any scent you find pleasant, it soothes the nervous system. And you don't need, you can just feel that if you just imagine or smell something good and you feel the exhale, you feel more relaxed, right? And so there are particularly, back to frankincense being, the most famous of the resins, there certainly is the most data and research and clinical and study on it as well, that some of the compounds in frankincense, can be measured to induce brainwaves, induce a state of mind. And so I've been kind of increasingly interested in this, you had mentioned about the slowing down, right? So, again, I'm not a brain scientist, but, these theta waves, which are the slower waves, the waves that are induced by meditation and relaxation, they're the slower waves. Lo and behold, these active compounds in these resins slow down the brain. And we can look at it in the brain. We can see it, through the science of it. But I know just from experiencing it, I know that, I feel it, I experience it. So I think there's, back to something you said earlier about, this is one of our earliest ways of knowing. It is a return to something ancient that is so universal and so deeply a part of our human experience. I don't know about you, but, I do think these senses are pretty unique to this human intelligent biological realm we're living in. When I tune into, I don't know, the known possible intelligences of the earth, of the universe, I think scent is probably kind of unique, or requires an ecosystem like the one we live in and our mammalian, cells and so forth to interact with. So like this return to tapping into these senses we have really is a simple and beautiful and enjoyable and pleasant tool. I mean, I know for me, a lot of the deep work, that inner work, it's heavy lifting, some of it. But boy, the scent, I'm like, if we could just weave in some scent, and it's so beautiful. Let's do that. More of that, please. More of that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because I think, first of all, our five senses, obviously we have more, but let's just say our five senses are so limited. And there are theories and people who have transcended different planes of consciousness. Let's say the old sages, right? You're actually able to smell so much more when you enter those really deep states of meditation. Smells that you never knew existed. Same with colors. We are limited in how we are perceiving our physical world, and there are 10 times to 100 times more colors that truly exist that we just can't perceive, as well as sound. I have heard that when people reach very, very high levels of consciousness, they can hear like almost like the orchestra of the universe. They call it music of the spheres. It's almost like hearing the entire universe, what sounds it's making. I mean, I want to experience that one day. Maybe when I die, I will.
Yeah.
I don't know about this life, but I have heard that.
Maybe we get glimpses of it, and maybe we don't get the full blown, sustained experience. But, I think it's not uncommon to have the glimpses that open our perception, that open our doors of perception, that really do open our capacity to perceive. And, I think in a lot of ways it's begins with the possibility and just being curious of the possibility of opening beyond what we already know. Mm-hmm. And so, I know this blend, this Open the Aperture, which is a beautiful blend. It's the one I almost always start with. It's the opening chord. And it really is about opening our field of perception to what is just beyond our known field. I mean, there is so much more, and our brains are doing actually a needed job of filtering a lot so we can kind of function, right?
True. Yes.
We need a sort of governance in our brain, or else it would be overwhelming, how much sensory input. We would go insane, or we would evolve in a very different way, potentially. But absolutely, I can relate to that, what you're saying about in certain states of mind, to have a broadened sensory capacities. And this has been spoken about for a long time in a lot of different ways, including in the modern day. And how do we, attune more to a broader field, right? And I think that, to me, that's the sensory experiences can kind of help us open because they're not thinking. And for me, I'm constantly trying to get out of my thinking mind. I mean, I have a very good thinking mind. I'm very grateful for it. It gets a lot done. Yes. But, my state of, union and bliss, or when I'm really in those moments that I really am present, I'm not in that thinking mind. I'm in my senses and I'm in the present. So here's to expanded senses. And that it actually, it seems to me that these things are possible to develop, that it is possible to develop your sense of smell, your sense of sound. It is possible to, through, and I love your color example, because that's one that always if I'm feeling stuck, I often just try to imagine what would it be like if I could see another color that didn't exist. Like,
wow,
they exist. My eyes can only perceive what they can perceive. But just to try to get out of my rigid thinking, to kind of try to consider something that is beyond what I'm capable of
Are you a Virgo?
Good call.
I
Yeah.
knew it. What do you know what your human design is?
I think I'm a manifesting generator.
Oh,
Does that sound right?
I maybe I am. I'm
Are
that.
you?
Yeah.
It's something well, maybe we'll have to talk offline about this. I know this is a kind of new and really interesting patterning mapping.
Hey, I believe in it all. You
I
know,
leave room for a lot of it. Yeah, well, how much, I'm a cross trainer also. It's like all these different disciplines that we can draw from and come up with a really interesting, evolving perspective on things, insights, how
well,
to read the tea leaves.
well, it also helps you navigate yourself because you don't come to this world with an instruction manual on how to manage myself, with all my idiosyncrasies and weaknesses and strengths and strange personality things. Finding tools that help us understand ourselves. Yes, you're outsourcing information rather than just going within and coming up with these uh, understandings yourself, like deeply heavy meditating, things like that. So you read the local horoscope, you're like, oh, that makes sense. It's whatever gets you through the day and gives you a sense of relief that the universe has a method to the madness. We all come to this earth and there's certain patterns, just like nature. For me, it feels like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this. You know what I mean?
I really do, and there's an aspect of this that I believe is really related to that inner knowing, our own inner knowing, and when for me, when I encounter something that resonates with my knowing, you know, I recognize it as true. You know,
Yes.
for myself, right? So these different modalities, like you bring up the human design or astrology, or these different methods in which I say, reading the tea leaves, but it really is measured against, for me, my own heart and soul and what resonates as truth to me, because I deeply believe that we all have a deep inner knowing that knows the way. And I know for myself, when I'm moving from that place, it's not a thought process, it's a deep knowing.
Yes.
And it's helped me navigate some very difficult and beautiful times in my life. But that, we can develop that too. We can practice that too. That things are a continuum, that it is possible to increase our sensitivity to our own, what seems to be true, when we look through these different systems. So, and sometimes in so many ways, it is an extraordinary time to be alive, to have access to so much information. And that's the caveat. It's also so confusing to be alive now because there's just such an oversaturation. It's the great paradox of all things.
I think we chose to be here at this time. So I think we just have to accept what is and not try to control the things that are out of our control. That's the key, is to just let go. And what I've gathered thus far, my short time here, is to really look at everything with compassion and grace, because this realm is created specifically for experiencing the polarization, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this realm. So just to have compassion for the polarization and then forgive it if it's causing you any kind of suffering or angst or whatever it is, and just embrace it, right? Just as the creator would, kind of laugh it off like, oh, these, God bless these people. They don't know what they're doing. Yeah, they're humans. They don't know what they're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't hurt each other like that, right? So that's how I have come to realize it. And I think that's what grace is, like the grace of the sun. It doesn't judge anything. It continues to shine on anything, without expecting anything in return. I think that is truly the key. So that's something that these tools help you realize. When you slow down enough and you become one with yourself, then you're not really bothered as much on these things that are happening around the world that you may not agree with or you may feel very, stressed out about. I think it's something to just at least help you get through the day.
It's really well said. Really well said. And yeah, in these times, how do we be present for what's happening as it's happening? What are the ways that we can learn to do that instead of be in a state of reaction, which is really hard to not be in a lot, but it is, I can't agree with you more about actually being present. And in some ways, I think, from the outside, that can sound kind of, sort of,
A cliche a little bit.
quaint,
Yeah.
quaint, but I, in fact, that presence, when I'm really present with what's happening and moving from a place that is in response to respond instead of react, it makes all the difference, especially when
All the
the
difference.
volume is turned up if something stressful is going on. So, I'm a deep believer in how do we learn how to, soothe our nervous system in the face of so much that really is designed to incite our reaction.
Well said. Completely agree. So, just to close up this incredible conversation, I want to get your opinion. I want your reflections on the idea of beauty because I feel that I'm really exploring this concept because everything in nature is so beautiful, yet can be so harsh sometimes. And when you're talking about these resins, so these resins are beautiful, but the tree basically had to be hurt in order to produce this. So in that way, there's this like beautiful game that is played, the game of life, so to speak. And there's a Sufi quote, and it's my favorite quote, and I think of it all the time, and it goes back to grace. So somebody's asking the Sufi mystic, what is forgiveness? And the Sufi mystic replies, forgiveness is the smell that a rose gives you when you crush it. So it's like, talk about receiving that beautiful form of grace after such destruction. And in that poetry, that is where the true beauty lies. So I wanted to get your opinion about beauty and what your thoughts are about it in this world.
Well, I do. That is one of the most beautiful and compelling poems, or that part of that poem, because it really does dive deep into even the concept of what forgiveness can be in true grace and presence. So yeah, and what you're saying about, resins being produced from trees being injured is potent and powerful, and is with me in every motion of this venture that I'm with as much care as possible. Is that, trees don't produce resin casually. It's a relationship. They are offering something substantial. And in that, I see that why have throughout time, this relationship to, it's a tree kind of bleeding in a way and offering this extraordinarily fragrant healing material, right? It's using to heal itself, but it's producing more than it needs to heal itself. And so, what is beauty? To me, is certainly sensorial. It is enriched by the senses, something that feels nourishing to my senses. So to me, beauty isn't, in the corral of one particular medium. I mean, I find beauty in through all of my senses, from sight and
Mhm.
sound and smell and taste and touch and intuition. I guess I relate to it in relationship, something that I can relate to, that I feel I have a relation to, that evokes something in me, that touches me, that touches my humanity, my experience a lived experience. And in that way, this idea, that a creative life or a beautiful life, it doesn't have to be in any one way or what we do to earn a living. We can have a beautiful and creative life as life, not as a separate thing that we do in a certain part of our life. So yeah, so I'd like to think I have a wide aperture for what is beautiful, and not all the classic beauty is the only beauty in the world to me.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Well, I'm so excited about all the things you have going on. Where can people find you?
Well, I am Mama Lou. I'm Renee Loux, but Mama Lou, MAMALOUX, .com is the hub of the resins and ritual practices. And on Instagram, it's mama.lou, Lux, and Facebook as well. So all the known platforms, and you can reach me through your senses.
Yes, love it. And I highly recommend. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for this incredible conversation. And I can't wait to try your other blends.
Thank you, Carla. Such a pleasure to be with you. And thank you for all the beauty you are bringing into our world.
Okay. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Ciao.